Welcome back to the Data Science Hangout, everybody. Happy Halloween. If we haven't met before, I'm Rachel. I lead customer marketing at Posit. Posit builds enterprise and open source tools for people who do data science with R and Python. I'm going to keep adding in. We are also the company formerly called Our Studio. I'm joined by my lovely co-host here today, Libby.
Hello, everybody. I'm a community manager working with Posit on the Data Science Hangout. So I work with Rachel. And I also work for Posit Academy. I help teach R and Python for professionals so that they can do more with data.
We're so happy to have you joining us here today. The Hangout is our open space to hear what's going on in the world of data across all different industries, chat about data science leadership, and connect with others who are facing similar things as you. And we get together here every Thursday at the same time, same place, except quick note, not next Thursday because we do have a webinar with GSK happening at the same time. Maybe we can all figure out how to watch it together and hang out together during, but just wanted to let you know. But if you're watching this as a recording and want to join in the future, there's details to add it to your own calendar below. But thank you so much to those who have make this the friendly and welcoming space that it is today, and we're all dedicated to keeping it that way. So if you ever have feedback for me about your experience or anything you want to share anonymously, good or bad, or maybe suggestions for topics to dive deeper on, I'm going to share a Google form in the chat with you right now. I'd love to hear from you. But you can always reach out to me directly on LinkedIn too.
At the Hangout, we love hearing from you. So, no matter your years of experience, your title, the industry you work in, the languages that you use, we want you to connect with each other in the chat, say who you are, where you're from, what your role is. If you are hiring for any roles, please share that. If you're looking for a role, please also share that. Share your LinkedIn profile, share a link to your website, your repos, whatever it is. This is a space for everybody to connect in, and we want you to stay connected even after we leave. So there are three ways to jump in and either ask a question or share your experience. You can raise your hand on Zoom. We can call you to jump in live. You can put a question in the Zoom chat. Feel free to put an asterisk next to it if you want us to read it. Maybe you're in a coffee shop or your mic doesn't work today. We can do that for you. And then we can also ask a question for you if you would like to post it anonymously on Slido. We have a Slido link in the chat. And if you ask there, you will be anonymous and we can read your question off for you.
With that, thank you again for joining us. We're so excited to be joined by our other co-host and featured leader, Steph Locke, digital and app innovation leader at Microsoft. And Steph, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role, but also what you like to do outside of work too.
Hi everyone. Hopefully you can ask. Um, it's Halloween, but also today was our first global neurodiversity event here at Microsoft. And one of the common terms in the neurodiverse community is masking. So you try and appear normal. You put on like that work face that you might be thinking you might put on a grumpy day, but we do that generally. So we are unmasked or masked in my case for today. So that kind of leads me to the first thing. Hi everybody, I'm Steph. I'm autistic, and my day job here at Microsoft is to work with people, which is a fun challenge because people are irrational, non-deterministic problems um, to help solve and understand. So it's an eternally challenging space for me to play in. What we do here, what myself and my team here do at Microsoft is we help our enterprise customers ship more value from their software and their AI solutions. So we help people make these things real and then get more and more value from them, which is a really cool job. Before that, before I joined Microsoft, I'd fallen a little bit into data science, from business intelligence and continuously wanting to do more, predict more. And that enabled me to use a lot of my maths background and see the value of statistics, because I was always more discrete maths than pure maths, because what is 30 people in a chi-square physical table to look things up at? What's the point? So it was only when I was dealing with millions of customers that I saw the value in data science and statistics. Just before I joined Microsoft, I'd been running my own consultancy, Locke Data, and then tried doing a AI startup for manufacturers. And my biggest problem, aside of the fact that, we went from 500,000 of pipe to zero pipe in one day when COVID hit. We had a nice, easy deploy to cloud button, and it turns out not a lot of manufacturers are, doing that whole cloud thing just yet, especially in small, medium-sized customers. So kept everybody going through COVID, and by the end of it, my bullet journal was meetings and emails, and we were doing a lot of services. So I went, you know what? I'm not having fun anymore. And looked around for what my next step was. And that next step was building up my leadership capabilities with a kind of a more robust foundation. So I joined Microsoft, and I've been able to be a grown up and get a house and pay off a student loan and all those things that I postponed while running in my own business and keeping everybody paid before I paid myself. So it's fantastic to be here today, because our studio, the IDE and Posit as a company have been close to my heart for 10 years now. I think 10 plus years I've been using our studio, and it really helped. And things like our Markdown just completely transformed the way that I thought about what good looks like in the data world. So it's been incredibly useful and transformational for me. So I'm always glad to be here and talk to the Posit gang.
Thank you, Steph. I would love to hear a little bit about what you like to do in your free time, first of all. And then I would love to hear sort of how you got to data initially from maybe your background or what you studied, because I think you got a degree in philosophy, right? And like that sort of transition from that to data feels really wide and is probably full of fun stuff. So I'd love to hear about that. And of course, like what you like to do outside of the job.
So I'm very geeky, just generally. So I really enjoy cooking, somewhat enjoy gardening when I want to go outside. But I read on average a fiction book a day. Like I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. My partner won't get up till 8, so I get an hour of reading in before I even get out of bed. I also do a bit of video gaming and like tabletop RPGs and stuff, but also like to go out, experience good food, travel, and I've always used conferences as a great way to work out where to go in the world, because it's so hard to pick. So if somebody gives me T&E to go somewhere, I'm going to go there. T&E being travel and expenses. In terms of how did I get into data science and data generally? So always been very kind of maths and science oriented. When I was 16, I first tried my hand at kind of building a business idea. My boss at the time had and learned PHP, cross-browser compatibility, and front-end development was not for me. That way lay ulcers. But then I did various things. I didn't actually go to university during my final 2 years of my degree. I worked full time. And because it was philosophy, I just kind of read and wrote essays in the evenings, so I could pay all my bills and things. And I got a job as a product analyst. We were, as my boss said, we were the new handbag. Everybody had to have an analyst. And I did things from schmoozing and doing karaoke with journalists through to negotiating contracts with energy suppliers, through to automating sales spreadsheets and doing forecasting and using all my Excel skills, using the buy a book scheme to basically read every single book Mr. Excel had ever written, to write BBA and things like that. And I really enjoyed the enabling other people and solving problems and helping people make better decisions. So I convinced somebody to teach me SQL. And then after learning some SQL, I learned SQL Server reporting services and integration services. And I still have flashbacks on doing string conversions between MySQL and SQL Server. Um, and probably the first data science type activity that I actually did was using SQL Server analysis services to do propensity analysis of who would buy different types of insurance. Um, so I just kind of kept going from there. I'm very community taught in everything, and I try to give back to the community as a result. But yeah, I've picked up so much over the years and learned, and I keep going where my passion takes me.
Thank you so much, Steph. So I know I had first reached out to you, I think it was maybe a little over a month ago. And so Hadley had reached out to me and said, had I had any hangouts around the idea of how do you persuade your manager to give you more time to be a better programmer? And he highly recommended your Earl conference keynote. And so I thought it'd be great to chat a little bit about that here. So what advice do you have for someone who wants to persuade their manager to give more time to improve their skills?
Yeah. I always remember a quote that I think gets attributed to various people, but includes Abraham Lincoln, which is if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. And aside of kind of growing my skills in financial services and that teaching me to want to always be right, uh, the competencies with which we can execute directly impact the time that we can do something and the quality by which we can do something. So if we are not well equipped, if our axes are blunt, it's going to take us 6 hours to chop down that tree. And then it's going to take us 6 hours to chop down that next tree. But if you spend that 4 hours sharpening the axe, it takes 2 hours to cut down the first tree, 2 hours to cut down the next tree. And if you keep sharpening for 5, 10 minutes in between each tree, it's only 2.5, it's like less than 2.5 hours per tree. So that's the way I look at things and talk to managers about is and leaders is that when we don't have time to hone our craft to deliver quality and to deliver quality work, we end up paying far more time in maintenance efforts and doing things in subpar ways. So it can feel slower at first, but you're going slower to go fast longer term. Competency and quality baked into everything we do enables more innovation in the long term.
Thank you so much. I wanted to follow up with another thing that was like Steph wrote about this and talked about this, and it's really important, which is the BAU article. And I didn't even know what BAU was before I read that article. I was like, what is this? And then everyone told me, like, this is a thing. Everybody knows that acronym, but I didn't. So the topic of it is that BAU is choking development. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I was really glad to finally write that article because it's been something that stuck with me for years. Is you see people who, when they don't necessarily have time to invest in doing things um, in a way that keeps quality, that's going to have high quality and low maintainability requirements and is easy to extend and create new things. When people aren't doing that, anything they ship is going to then cost them more time to do something, to look after whatever they've shipped. That then gives them less time to ship the next thing. So the next thing takes longer to deliver. And then they also have to do the maintenance on that thing. And as they keep going, they spend more and more of their time kind of like hugging, loving, maintaining. Sorry, I'm in the office today and it looks like the lights have gone off. There we go. So I just had to go and wave around the office like a loon. Um, yeah, so the amount of continued effort something takes after you initially develop it for it to continue being useful to other people takes up your time away from building the next new useful thing. And it slowly but surely stacks up and stacks up until the only thing you're able to do with your day is maintain things. And most people don't get into their jobs to be maintainers of systems. They get into their jobs to build great things and have value and add value. And it's really hard to feel like you're adding value when you're just keeping all your previous work going. So what we can do is, and this comes down to your question of, you know, convincing people to have that time for learning. It also comes down to how do we design things and work, and how do we work so that the thing that we output at the end is going to take less time to keep it adding value, because the less time that we can make that take, the more new things we can build and the more things that we can support for the same amount of time. And so that's something that we all need to be thinking about is, are you currently spending too much time just keeping the lights on and putting out fires? With a bit of time, could you get that time burden down? Could you improve your situation? And could you change the way that you do things so that you spend less time going forward on that maintenance, on those activities? Because those activities aren't adding value, adding new value. They're just hopefully keeping old value continuing.
Thank you so much, Steph. So Libby let me know my audio was cutting out a little bit. I did a Wi-Fi test. It seems okay. So I put different headphones, but does it sound okay, Libby?
Yep.
We're good? Okay. Steph, to dive a little bit deeper into some of the work you're doing at Microsoft, would you be able to share a bit about some of the problems your team helps solve?
Yeah, so um, I work primarily in software and the use of AI capabilities, but a lot of this still ends up being really relevant for data scientists. Um, so we focus on a number of areas, and one of them is what we'd call application modernization. Somebody built something a while ago, or in an enterprise, lots of people have built things and bought things, and they're all sitting there and running, but they all have technology that was current at the time they deployed and haven't necessarily had a lot of updates since. And they're going into those kind of maintenance problems of either people are just spending all their time maintaining things and not shipping value for the company, or everybody's stopped maintaining things and there's a whole bunch of fires that people are desperately going, not me, don't make me fix it. So we start working with customers to think, okay, how can you uh, change your perceptions around people and processes to solve these? Because it's always a people problem. Processes support people, and then tools support processes. So it's, how do you keep the culture, people, processes piece first? But then also, how do you bring technology to help change things? So in the case of these at-onization scenarios, how can you use different tools as part of your processes to start bringing your technology up to a consistent baseline? Or how do you take a value-based approach to where do you drive these efforts and so on? So we work with a lot of customers on monetization. And this is in kind of the data world. This might be old databases. You might have Hadoop clusters running with MapReduce jobs. You might have old versions of Python that, like version 2 running and not version 3. And, software, even when it's every software ages and rusts and technology moves on. So that's one of the key areas. The other, we also help people build new things well and better and kind of think about, okay, how do you proactively optimize and how do you make sure that you've got great observability and monitoring to know it's working and things. And then the final area that we do a lot of work with is how does your team have the right processes and tools to continue shipping value? So some of you might have heard Microsoft has a lot of co-pilots. I'm proud of myself. It's only 24 whole minutes in, and that's the first time I said the word co-pilot. But we have GitHub Copilot to help developers, data scientists, data engineers kind of get some of the grunt work of writing code that makes a difference quicker and more effective. So how technology teams provision environments for data scientists, developers to work in. What does that look like for third parties and contractors? What about when you have like a Java estate and a .NET estate and a Spark estate and like all of these disparate development stacks? How do you work and enable somebody to switch from all of those? How do you build a consistent compliance and security backbone automated inside your development and collaboration environment like GitHub or GitLab and things? And so we help customers tackle these types of problems because there's no silver bullet on any of this. It's all kind of hard work doing culture and process work to enable people as well as tools.
Thanks, Steph. I just thought of a follow-up question I meant to ask you when we are talking about business as usual work. I think about this sometimes with like my own things that I just do because I've always done it. But can you tell us a little bit about like how an initiative that you've killed or how you go about doing that or deciding when it's right?
Yeah, so I very proudly, I'm very happy to say that in Microsoft, which can have a culture of you need to own things, I've killed two things, two of my babies. this year, this fiscal year. It really helps to be able to kill something when you have had a solid definition of done. So, like with everything, it is amazing if you can get clarity on what good looks like. And especially when you're thinking about software or processes or new initiatives. So, one of the things that I killed is we have discovery processes to help different parts of customers' estate, whether it's their infrastructure, their data science, or their applications, be able to understand where their technical debt is and what the value is that they're going to be able to get in the cloud. We inherited this activity when we got created as a new team last year. And so I formed an initiative to help us be able to onboard this new capability, help us learn quickly, share good practices. I try not to call them best practices, share good practices, and be able to like really embed this as part of our kind of commitment to excellence. By the time a year had rolled on, we had learned everything we needed to learn as a broader group. The enablement had happened, and people were kind of rolling well or rolling all right. But then the bits that were still a challenge wasn't really something that we could do centrally. It needed distributed efforts. So I killed the central piece because I was able to line up accountable people elsewhere who were thinking about things from the infrastructure side, the data side, the app side, for them to be able to go and actually go, okay, so we're good at this. What does great look like for us when we do the infra piece, the data piece? And so now that I killed the central piece because I was able to put it into different activities, other initiatives that are running, because those are going to be able to take things to the next level. So my definition of done, get everybody equipped and enabled to execute, was sorted. And now other people are responsible for driving their individual areas of excellence.
Thank you so much. I resonate with that a lot. And I think that there's a lot of people in the chat right now who are also going, yep, I wish we could do that on our team. I see, Stephanie, you have a question in the chat. Would you like to unmute and ask that? I'll give you a second.
Another Steph.
Another Steph. Yeah. Stephanie, if you are not able, I can also ask it for you. Okay. I don't see Stephanie unmuting, so I'm going to ask. No problems. All right. The question is, what was it like transitioning working for yourself to going to a massive organization? What was more challenging, or which one was easier?
Yeah. Moving to Microsoft was both awful and amazing at the same time. From coming from a business that I ran and that had like 10 people. I'd always worked in organizations that were quite small, like up to 250 people in HQ kind of thing. So it was really, I've always been used to being able to execute quickly, to get stuff done. And so going to Microsoft, which is such a large organization that there are almost inevitably 5 different departments who are doing roughly the same thing that you need to collaborate with to help go further with that kind of challenge to going quickly was quite challenging. But coming into a culture of teamwork and being able to bring a group together to get economies of scale and to be able to build something bigger was fantastic. And of course, you know, whilst I work for myself and I love being able to set like the direction and the strategy and everything, I'll be honest, pay, pensions, being able to afford my own house, sweet, sweet benefits, um, counseling, my in the UK, private medical insurance isn't usually a thing, but we have fantastic private medical insurance with Microsoft that's helped cover my partner's transition entirely instead of it being like a 10-year agonizingly slow waitlist hell. Things like that have been so much better that I wouldn't have been able to achieve kind of running my own business and paying other people first. So big culture, pros and cons, and it's been a really useful enabler for kind of my circumstances and um, to be more positive.
Thank you. I see, Sonia, you had a question in the chat that I know was for people in the chat as well, but I thought it might be good to ask out loud too. Do you want to jump in?
Hi, yeah, sure. I am out, so I'm not able to turn my camera on, but I can speak. I am an educator. I am someone who works for a university and am just kind of dipping my toes in the AI world. I do have a little bit of a data-ish background. I did a lot of things focused on academia, was very quant heavy. Kind of in the process of coming out of that and leaving that life behind. I know there's lots of other people here that are also in similar
A lot
boats,
of
but
recovering academics.
I am kind of also looking into the whole AI ethics thing, which is also a very fun topic. Turnitin is a huge thing and a lot of universities. It's something that I am very much interested in. I have a global studies background as well with my education, so I just making sure that a lot of international students who do come in and turn in a lot of their assignments, how they're graded and judged based on others. So I've been hearing a lot of different things about linguistics and conversational design and AI. I would love it if I could connect with someone and just get some more information as someone who is super new to a lot of the heavier data science and tech stuff that I was previously doing.
Yeah, for sure. I will put my email address in the chat, and anybody who wants to connect with me for this kind of thing can email me, and I will endeavor to connect you with the right person or chat with you myself about it. Because yeah, AI ethics is something that incredibly matters and is one of the reasons why I'm proud to work at Microsoft because we have been like we do things like pushing for legislation, which how many tech companies push for legislation of themselves? Like that kind of thing is just an amazing situation to be in. So yeah, well, very happy to connect offline.
That's awesome, Steph. Thank you. That's very generous of you. I wanted to bring in Kylie because Kylie, you asked a question way, way, way in the beginning and we missed it. Would you like to ask? And we're all talking about it in chat, by the way. So everybody weigh in.
Sure. Sorry, I can't turn on my camera at the moment. But Steph, at the very beginning, you said, you're into cooking, you read a book a day. And so my natural question is, what's one of the favorite books you've read recently? Or not
Um,
recently, whatever comes to
yeah,
mind.
I'll give you my latest non-fiction read. So I have been incredibly inspired and enriched by Brene Brown's work. So I read Daring Greatly, which has really helped me think about um, even things like the shame I feel around my gender and how I communicate in my relationships, but also how I show up as a leader. And that then led me to read, I've been working through her Atlas of the Heart, which is a book on emotions and experiences, because I have pretty pants recognition of what's going on in my body and my emotions. So, kind of having some actual, effectively textbook definitions and anecdotes and experiences of like, this is what sadness is like for a lot of people. This is, this is positive comparison and this is negative comparison. This is like when it goes into unhealthy has been useful for giving me better vocabulary and therefore better processing.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, anything by Brene Brown is amazing. And actually even hard for me to read sometimes because it brings up heavy stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm having a hard time getting through this. Well, we had a great question on Slido that I would love to ask. It says, I feel that as a coder, I can't progress further in my career without going into management. I think that we all experience this at some point. Any tips for progression, but wanting to stay at the coding level?
So I think the problem in many organizations is actually people go in management is framed as the way to have more influence. So, you can have leadership without authority. And as a technical person, what that often looks like is, to a certain extent, moving away from being excellent at the coding side to becoming a deciding factor in what gets coded. So this is, how do things like architectural design, what do we research, what do we invest our time in, all of these things kind of some organizations conflate with management, but they're technical leadership pieces. And so you can continue being an amazing coder, for sure. But the challenge is, and some companies will push it as you can only progress if you go into management. But really, the push is for you to go from being quite directed to directing others, to setting strategy, to having impact at a larger scale. If you want to continue solving deep technical problems or building new algorithms or kind of being on the technology cutting edge, there is nothing wrong with that. You can get amazingly good. But there are only certain types of organizations that will respect those boundaries. And it's okay to have those as boundaries and continue doing them. But you might, for various reasons, prefer to think about how can I have a greater scale of impact? And that's where management or product management, architecture, various bits and pieces will evolve your role.
Thank you. Yeah, I once had a director tell me, you'll be ready to go into management when you start realizing that you want to make the decisions about how things go and you want that level of control. And I think that there's something to that. I have another great one from
How do
Slido.
you like,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was wondering if we could stay on this one a little bit because I like the point you made about like going from being directed to directing. And do you have any tips for us on like how you do that? I know some of the things we've talked about before in other hangouts is like if you're not at that high leadership level, how do you get in the room for some of these conversations and how do you influence the decisions being made?
Yeah, so Part of it is, unfortunately, fortunately, people skills, but a large proportion of it is actually how do you approach your job in terms of how are you scaling your impact? So, unfortunately, a whole lot of applications or machine learning solutions and everything are kind of like fundamentally the same. You're going to go through the same process, you're going to write roughly the same code, and it's going to produce kind of roughly the same outputs. The way you can scale is, okay, how do we build the framework to stop people doing roughly the same thing bespoke every time? How do I change the way that we work to deliver more business value more quickly? And then how do I tell people that we're having more business value more quickly? Because you can't just do it for the funsies. You need a measurement and you need to be able to communicate it in terms of like positive things. Alternatively, like scaling out is one way of doing things. So like being able to automate the production. But there's also scaling up your impact. So you might build that one solution, but then how do you make that one solution have more impact? Could it generalize to a slightly different part of the business? Could you publish the results, do internal knowledge transfer? Could you help get that through regulatory sign-off processes when that's not currently your job? So you can think about how can you add more business value that is more strategically useful than the initial act of writing the code was useful. Because writing the code is useful, but it's kind of the similar with research in that the act of research is useful, but almost until something has gone through its commercialization and commoditization phases and is turned into something practical, it's only that practical piece that proves the value of the research in many cases. And we might have some positive debates about that and my perspective on research. It's the same kind of thing when we do a single activity in our work life. It's how you turn that one piece, that one-to-one time to value effort into a one-to-many value that you really start moving up the stack and in terms of influence and perceived impact.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad we stayed on that for a second. Alrighty. I have a couple more questions here in Slido, and some of them kind of pertain to each other. One that I really liked was, what are some of the most impactful ways that you've seen AI make a difference to your stakeholders?
So my stakeholders are effectively sales leadership inside Microsoft. We have people with neurodivergent conditions. We've got people who are incredibly time-strapped, who have huge areas of responsibility, like kind of, billions of pounds or billions of dollars of revenue every year that they're kind of trying to get 25% plus year-on-year growth in. So they're a highly capable group, but they are facing a tremendous amount of change on a continuous basis. And like me, it's not that we're triple booked. We get to choose between 3 sessions at a time where we're going to have impact in terms of like calendar management. So it's actually just the base, like co-pilots is having a really great impact on them, helping be able to digest emails, more quickly, being able to get a quick kind of TLDR on a presentation before they work out where they need to go look at specifics that they need to drill into. It's helping them never start from a white page. It's helping them catch up on meetings, find out what actions they've been assigned, things that they haven't been able to get to, helping them analyze how they speak uh, and and convey information and things like that. So it's just like AI is having a pervasive productivity benefit that's enabling all of my key stakeholders to achieve more, which is super, super cool.
We have a great follow-up to that because some of these Slido ones were sort of in the same vein. And the question is, how do you see AI impacting data science roles? Do you think it will replace jobs or impact on the skills that data scientists are going to need?
So this will partly depend on like what people's definitions of AI are, but I think generative AI uh, um, has like some amazing advancements on natural language processing and how we can interact in a multimodal capability is really groundbreaking. And I think we should all invest some time in knowing how we can leverage whether it's large language models or small language models and how you can consume these things. Because they can change our interfaces. They can start supporting some reasoning and code generation for us. But I don't see it replacing data scientists. It might replace some of the coding we do as data scientists. And I think of this kind of the same way as, and I've always been quite judgy about these things, like low code interfaces to data science. So like we had Azure Machine Learning, Studio, and you drag and drop, and you can put a bunch of boxes next to each other, and you go, "Yay, I've got a model. I don't understand it, but I've got something. You can now call an API." But the data scientist's value for me isn't how they solve the problem. It's how they help people understand and define the problem and bring the insight to light. So I think we might change, like we might all write less code. We might be able to get the code part solved sooner, but our merit in understanding domains, turning that into scoped challenges and problem statements, and working out the appropriate steps to solve that with solid quality outcomes, that isn't going to change. The what won't change, but the how might.
Thank you. So a question that we love getting to ask here at the Hangout is there a piece of career advice that you've received over your career or that you've given somebody that you'd like to share with us?
I'd like to share one that took me years to break out of, which I think probably a lot of women get, which was I started a new job in I did something really really impressive within my first week and sent an email and said, I've done XYZ to solve the problem. And my manager at the time said, no, no, not I, say we. The team did something. Well, the team wasn't actually involved, but I kind of got into this habit of giving away my impact. Now, it's not that you need to brag and shout to the world like I'm amazing and like overhype everything you do, but you need to recognize when you're making a positive impact and reflect on how can I make more of that impact based on the hard work I've already done. And a lot of that is actually less about you doing more and more about enabling other people to do things with what you've done. So it involves education, knowledge transfer, re-templating things, turning things into micro content, setting up a set of scheduled emails so that somebody actually reads it because they need it 5 times. And that's something that I think I I wish I hadn't have gotten effectively a code smell into my ways of working. And I think you should all think, how are you adding value? Be clear on how you're adding value, and then use that information to pursue more impact and more scale of your value.
I really, really appreciate that advice. I can be guilty of that sometimes too, and just like taking a second to go back and reread what you said and thinking about how should I go and change the way I'm saying that. That's actually one of the ways I like started using ChatGPT was just saying like, how should I change this to adjust the tone the way I'm presenting it.
Yeah.
Libby, I know there's thread going on in the chat that you've kind of been keeping an eye on. Is there a question or anything that we should discuss from that?
Yeah, it's a really great topic. Javier brought this up, so I'd love him to unmute and talk about it if he's still here. I know sometimes he has to jump for another call, but it's about being an
5 minutes left.
IC.
Hey,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, I'm still here. No, I mean, I just like I love my job as an IC. I'm the lead for a machine learning team, and we do a lot of your traditional data science work. We do a lot of kind of like ML ops or engineering around the stack to support the data scientists at our company. So I honestly love my job. It's just when the side conversation was kind of about uh, compensation and things like that, and maybe not FANG companies or the biggest of the tech companies, and how it feels like there might be a higher ceiling for folks in management than ICs, and even when there is kind of like salary parity between, let's say, years of experience or level between IC and management track, seems like overall compensation sometimes is still structured to, um, compensate more heavily the folks on the management track. Um, higher bonuses, they're given stock units sometimes, different perks like that. So yeah, I don't know. It was just a side conversation that was happening, and I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I think one of the key things to remember is who sets wages.
Right. Yeah.
Managers set wages.
Yes.
So the lions feed themselves to a large extent. Um, yeah, so I'm not going to disagree with you. Like in almost every company in the world, no, very few of the technology people will earn as much as like the C-suite or heads of kind of thing, right? But similarly, your like the technology team might have a higher median salary than jobs that don't have a high digital component, but the sales team is probably always going to out earn you as well. Because as much as most organizations value to a certain extent their software, their features, the data science pieces, none of that matters without the incoming marketing and sales pieces. And so the sales team will get, because of targets and incentives and things, will earn more than the techies. And that's
That's a really good perspective, by the way. I mean, I like that actually.
so it's about like perception of value inside companies determines where the money goes.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I know we have just a few minutes left here. And so I thought a good question to end us on is, Steph, what's something that you're excited about in the next 6 months?
Good question. Sorry, I'm gonna try and be a slightly more external processor than an internal processor and just go super duper quiet whilst I'm thinking things through. Um, so on a on a professional um perspective, um, in a couple of weeks, it's Ignite, and that is when we do a bunch of cool announcements and things, and it's been GitHub Universe, and there's like some really cool things like you can pick now just from ChatGPT through to Claude and other generative AI solutions to support your coding kind of thing. So we've had some cool announcements, but I'm also excited for the new shinies that are going to be coming in a few weeks. Professionally, I don't think unless something awesome comes along, next 6 months, I'll probably still be at my job because I've had the fun challenge of my team is 7 people in end of June. And by the end of December, it should be 15 people. So I'm going through a fun challenge of scaling my team and kind of maturing that team for excellence. Personally, my partner is it's their birthday in a couple of weeks, and I get to make some jokes about their age because they're older than me. But we're going to continue doing great things with our house and improving our lives and doing more coffee mornings before we catch the train and things like that. So yeah, I'm very happy to be kind of continuing my life and continuing to up quality in all the areas.
I love that. Thank you so much, Steph, for taking the time to join us today and for being so open with us and sharing all of your experiences. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the Halloween spirit too.
Thank you. And thank you, like 92 of you listened to me for like a whole hour. So I really appreciate that. People drop when they're not getting value, so I'll take that as a ringing endorsement. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Rachel and Libby, for having me on. And Marlene, you definitely win the Halloween competition. It wasn't a competition, but you won it. So thank you.
I agree.
More Halloween, more fun than Christmas for me.
I Well, I hope you have a great rest of your evening and enjoy Halloween. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you, everybody.